night.
We welcome you in. The week has arrived, and what a week this is. Everyone loves Thanksgiving week because it is a couple of days off, and it's also great football, and we have plenty of that this weekend. And let's get right to it as we begin the last week of the regular season, and what a season it has been. Auburn secondary up for the challenge of Alabama's dangerous trio of receivers. Kind of knew that, didn't we? What does Coach Saban have to say about all of this?
Offensively, they've been very effective, creating balance. I think Bo Nix has done a really good job of doing that for them. They're very effective running the football. They've got really good skill guys outside. They've got a really good runner. Whitlow's a really good runner. So this team is very good on special teams. So, this is, the best team we've played probably so far this year, and it'll be the most challenging place that we've played. So, real challenge for our players on our team.
Hold on. Did I just hear you correctly, Coach Saban? This is the best team we have probably played so far this season. Am I missing something? Did the LSU game not happen? I guess not. Moving on, because that one has not been settled yet. Gamecocks have upset. Remember, they beat Georgia, number 4 team in the country. Why not Clemson? One was on the road. This one's at home. Shouldn't it be easier to win at home than on the road? Speaking to the Dogs, average offense, elite defense. What it means for LSU. Remember, Kirby Smart was on our show Friday. He defended his offense. And then they went out and struggled and scrapped for every point. And did you know Georgia hasn't scored 30 points in a game since beating Tennessee on October 5th? The Bulldogs are one of 12 FBS schools that haven't scored 30 points in that span. The others have gone 14 and 51. Georgia is in the SEC championship game and currently ranked number 4. So here we are. And we're glad you're with us. A lot to discuss, a lot to chew on this program this afternoon. How about Blake Topmeyer on Jeremy Pruitt? I casually threw out yesterday that outside of Ed Ogeron, should Jeremy Pruitt get some consideration for Coach of the Year? Man, a lot of people didn't like that response. Seth Emerson on the Dogs. Brooks Cabina on LSU. And your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Just a program reminder, it may be a holiday week, but we will be here today, tomorrow, Wednesday. We will not be here Thursday. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving, but we'll be back Friday live from Auburn, Alabama. So all things considered, we're pretty happy and proud to be here the majority of this week. We start with Greg. Greg, good afternoon. Hope all is well with you.
Hey, Paul, thanks for taking my call. I had a conversation with you last week, and we were talking about playoff implications, and the narrative last week was that Alabama, Oregon, and Utah were kind of neck and neck. And after Oregon lost to Arizona State Saturday night, the powers that be, or the media that be, decided that they were going to throw Oklahoma into that mix as well. And I just wonder how many people who are tired of Alabama appearing in the playoffs were livid when Oregon didn't hold up its end of the bargain.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I hate to make outrageous statements on this program because I know nobody's paying attention to anything I say, Greg, but I really do think there are a number of people in the national media who, of course, take their cues from several components in the world that don't want Alabama to get in. And I understand it. Alabama's been in every playoff, and there's some Alabama fatigue. But with Oregon out of the way, you start doing comparison tests, and I've seen Alabama ranked as low as 8th in some people's polls. I mean, I'm sorry, I was never that impressed with Utah and Oregon, and I think we all saw the Oregon answer on Saturday night. I mean, they lost to a team that had not had a lead since October. And I'm not here to disparage Utah. I think they're a really good football team. But I don't think they're as good as Alabama, even without Tua.
I would agree, and I think Tim Brando was one of those who fall into that category, and I get it. People are tired of seeing them in there, but if you want them not to be in there, then you've got to put some teams up there who can play better than they can head to head, and then just prove it on the field. And this year is just going to be one of those years where if Alabama does get in, it's going to be for a lack of competition on the outside of what Bama can affect, and those teams are just going to have to learn to do better. And it makes you wonder, if there is a expansion of teams to 8. We're arguing now about there's going to be 4 teams, quality teams that are capable of winning the championship, and there only might be 2 or 3 this year. What are you going to do when you come to 8?
No, you're right. And listen, I mean, there are a lot of good teams around the country, but Alabama's schedule has been what it is, and to me, it's up to Alabama Saturday. I mean, they're playing a really good team. I'm not going as far as to say what Saban said, but Saban's in spin mode right now. He has to be. He knows that people are measuring everything he says, and they'll be watching this game very closely. And if Alabama wins, I think they probably have done enough. And by the way, I think this narrative that Alabama has to win convincingly is a crock. Alabama's going to Auburn. I mean, maybe because I've covered like 35 or 40 Iron Bowls, I know how important it is. It doesn't make any difference what the records are. That is a difficult game to win on the road. So, I mean, Alabama wins 3-2. To me, it's a significant win. Let's get to the calls. And Augie, always a great Monday caller. Hello, Augie in New Orleans.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing? Hey, Paul, I just want to correct a couple of things you've been saying about yourself and that you're disparaging yourself. I know it's self-deprecating, but you are a cultural icon of the South. When people want to talk about values of the South, college football comes up, and you are the man. So, with no further ado, let's move into it.
Thank you.
Number one, what do you think about Ohio State after the Penn State game? So to me, they looked human for the first time this year. Did they give you any pause, or are you still on the Ohio
they
State
did.
train?
And listen, it's hard to put a team away. We saw that. We've seen that a lot of times this year. Georgia has had difficulty. It reminded me a little bit of the Georgia-Auburn game. I mean, just put the team away.
They really did.
LSU hasn't really. LSU had that problem against Alabama. That game shouldn't have been close.
It shouldn't have been.
But it does happen, and to me, they are vulnerable. And I think Michigan. I haven't really made up my mind on this game, but I mean, I think there's a reasonable chance they're going to lose this game.
Paul, let me ask you this. We've listened to you for years, and you were always on Harbaugh, and for good reason. But are you pulling for Harbaugh this weekend? Because
I think so. I mean, listen, the thing with Jim and I has been so overdone, and I think sometimes I become a character in a Harbaugh reality show. And
a comic book, maybe.
Yeah, and I was
the Riddler.
I started the year thinking they were going to have a great year, and then they lost a couple of games. And do we overreact? Yeah, listen, I mean, somebody made the comment to me, well, how can you say good things about this person and 3 months ago or 2 months ago you were disparaging them? Listen, we do this every day. This is not.
Absolutely.
These aren't Supreme Court decisions we're making here. This is a talk radio show.
Exactly. But I agree. And, watching the Arkansas game, of course, I'm an LSU guy. That defense still gives me some concern because there were some plays Arkansas missed early in the game. And then at the end, they just seemed to lose interest. So, talk about Georgia's offense having scored 30 yet all season. Their chance is coming in the SEC championship game because they're going to go against a very average defense. And I'm sorry what people say about Aranda. He has just let the side down this year with his guys. I just don't see them getting that much better from game to game. So, with that, I'll move on. Arkansas's next head coach. I heard Greg talk about who's the guy, Lane Kiffin coming in. I think, though, this is a great job for two people in need, and that's Arkansas needs a head coach, and the old Ole Miss coach, what's his name? Freeze. He needs rehabilitation. I think this is a match made in heaven for both of them. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, if I'm sitting in Hunter Yurichek's chair, I would definitely interview both Kiffin and Hugh Freeze. I think and thanks for the call, Augie. We have to go to a break. The X factor is Gus Malzahn. I think that goes without saying, but I have no earthly idea what Gus Malzahn is thinking right now, and we probably won't know until after Saturday. The good news is we'll be in Auburn this weekend, so we'll be able to listen at places we don't normally get to listen to. Anyway, up against a break, more to come. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. So it is Monday. That means one thing: low-hanging fruit.
That's right. We have it here. I'm going to start off with the lemon right off the bat.
Wow. Brave man there.
Yeah. And this one simply says, Texas is terrible. Low-hanging fruit or truth?
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
I mean, dumpster fire is used too often. I don't think it is a dumpster fire. I just think it's sad that Texas is still Texas, which is not impressive.
Can we just say they're backwards?
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Little thing we came up with at the pod. Sounded funnier back then, trust me. Anyway, Notre Dame is the best two-loss team in the nation. Low-hanging fruit or Kubiak's fantasy?
Let's see. Who else? Who's in consideration?
Well, Michigan, who's starting Notre Dame.
But if they lose this week, they have 3 losses, so they won't count. Florida's
Florida.
there.
Oregon.
I'm going Florida.
I think so.
All right.
Sorry, Coops.
They lost 45-14. I can't say much.
You guys beat
All right,
Boston
got the
College.
green apple here. The wrong team is favored in the Iron Bowl this weekend, Paul. Low-hanging fruit or truth?
Well, I never get hung up because to me, as Danny Sheridan has told us many times, the betting line is not some guy waking up on the wrong side of the bed. The betting line is something that's thrown up against the wall and people bet it. So right now, the public perception is that Alabama is the better team.
Okay.
I'll take that. All right, how about some sour grapes? Always a low-hanging fruit favorite. And this week's edition says that Harbaugh's legacy will be defined on this Saturday.
I think that's true. Listen, he's never going to escape all the weirdness and the quirkiness, but a win against Ohio State and he gets the lifetime contract.
Right. No more sour grapes for Michigan fans at that point.
I'll save the banana for you. I know.
Thank you.
I like the bananas. I'll
We
take
may
the
not
other
get there.
apple
We're
here.
running out of time in the segment.
No, it's all right. Plenty of time. Oklahoma played too many close games for a college football playoff berth. Lying fruit or truth?
There is no way Oklahoma would be in my top 4. They've won the last 2 weeks, but they could have lost. You cannot trust them if you're the college football playoff committee.
One more quick one.
It wasn't a first down, by the way. Arizona State took 2 teams out of the playoff this weekend. Low-hanging fruit?
I think it's possible. I think they may have eliminated a couple of teams. They're Alabama's best friend right now, though. Welcome back. We're talking about Herm Edwards during the break. I think he will be the commencement speaker next spring at Alabama should they win the national championship. Let's continue. George is in Florida. How are you, George?
I'm doing great. I'm a long-time listener, but a first-time caller, Paul.
Well, I'm glad to hear from you.
But I have a story to tell. I told it to those guys that answered the phone that when we were boys, Lee Corso and I used to play tennis.
Oh, wow.
And we were 11, 12 years old. But then in junior high, we played junior high basketball together. But in 1952, Lee Corso quarterbacked the Miami-Jackson high school football team. And nobody in Dade County had beaten Miami High School for 25 years. But they did it that year in 1952. And so, and also in 1952, I was in Homer High School in Homer, Michigan, and I quarterbacked their football team to their first championship. Well, their claim to fame was, and it's been on ESPN, that they had won 75 straight baseball games Nobody else had done that before. And so there's a story on ESPN. You can check it out. But one of the pitchers on that team was named Josh Coleman, and he became a pitcher for the Diamondbacks in Arizona there. So it's just a little information that probably doesn't mean anything to most
Where
people,
did you and Lee grow up?
in Miami.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Well, we used to play down at the Y, and you know, back then, Miami had great ball fields. They had great parks, and I grew up there. I was born there. I don't know where Lee was born, but I know I was born there, and I remember when they put a barbed wire fence around Miami International Airport to keep the cows off the runway.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And how old are you, if I may ask?
84.
Okay, so I couldn't remember. I know Lee's birthday is in August.
Well, mine's in April, so I'm that much older than him.
Okay. Yeah, it's remarkable. I spent a year traveling with Lee, and quite often we'd find ourselves at 11 o'clock at night at the Atlanta airport with him heading off to Orlando and me heading home. And I would try to look after him. One time we were walking together, and 11 o'clock at night, and we started the day, as you can imagine, pretty early to be on game day. He was out walking me by about 10 steps.
Yeah. Well, he
only has me by a little more than 20 years. So.
Yeah. Well, it was a thing where he knows people in my family. I mean, the Frosty Freeze across the street from the Jackson Field, my uncle owned that. He knew my uncle, and he probably knew my mother. She worked at the Live and Let Live drugstore there in Miami. But I live about 30 miles north of where he lives in Florida.
Right.
And so, if he calls in or anything, wants my phone number, you're welcome to.
Well, I will. I'll see him probably in about a week or two. I tell you what. Thank you, George, for calling. I appreciate sharing that story. Let's continue with more calls. And Ben is in Conway, Arkansas. Hey,
Greetings and kudos, Professor Winston Bartholomew Finebaum.
That is my name, my real name.
That's right. Paul, I have not been able to watch you guys for quite a while due to my health. So I may be repeating some things, some topics that have come up, but forgive me if I do. Arkansas Razorback football.
Okay.
Over the weekend, Greg McElroy and some other commentators talked about how Morris should have been given more time. Well, let me tell you, we kept giving Bielema a time, going to turn the corner, saw how that worked. And Morris just not only didn't make any progress, but he regressed. If it had been up to me, I'd have fired him after the San Jose State game. Just an absolute horrible situation. So I think that that thing about more time in this particular instance, there wasn't a necessity for more time. But also, we keep hearing these comments about who would want the Arkansas job. Paul, on November 20th, 2011, LSU was number 1, Alabama was number 2, and Arkansas was number 3. And we know that these things go in cycles. Alabama had some down years. LSU had some down years. We are having some really down years at Arkansas. But who would want that job? He's going to be looking at a $5 million plus salary. He's going to be living in one of the nicest parts of the country, consistently ranked like the number 3 or 4 best place to live in the country. Got a beautiful stadium that seats somewhere around 76 to 80,000 people. By the way, Morris at one point was putting less than 30,000 fans, bottoms, into the stadium. So that had a role in it as well. But I'm just tired of hearing people say that the Arkansas job is not a good job, because fans, facilities, financials, It's all there, and I have no idea.
Hey, can you
no
get
recommendation.
can you get the job for me? I'll take it.
Oh, you ought to. Plus, we give out real good buyouts.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great. I think Northwest Arkansas is beautiful. I mean, it's really a fantastic area, and I'm considering it's on my list of places to move. So get me the job, and I'm there. I can start Monday if you don't mind. Thanks for the call. Let's check in with Randy in Ohio. Hello, Randy.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing
We're doing
today?
great.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
taking my call.
Of course.
Hey, just a couple things. Number one, do you think Nick Saban's big win over the School of the Deaf and Blind Saturday really helped their chances on making the playoffs?
Oh, no doubt. That's a game that the committee right now in Grapevine, Texas, is studying, and they'll break that tape down 3 different ways.
Yeah. Number two, I know there's a lot of lobbying from the SEC people to try to get Alabama in there, but if they do get in the playoffs, who are they going to beat, Paul? They couldn't beat LSU with Tua, and that game should have been a lot bigger spread than it ended, like you know. Now, they got slaughtered by Clemson last year when they were at full strength, and there ain't no chance they could beat Ohio State. So why is such the lobby for them to get in?
Well, listen, I don't think you can think that far ahead. To me, the playoff is about the 4 best teams. It's not about what's going to happen once you get there. Now, I do think you have to factor that in, and that's where Oklahoma, to me, gets eliminated. I wouldn't trust Oklahoma right now against one of the 4 best teams in the country because they're not one of the 4 best teams in the country. They're not one of the 6 best teams in the country.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean, to me, as far as I'm concerned, Oklahoma is eliminated. To me, Utah, let's see what they do. Utah has Colorado this weekend. That should be a major test. And then they'll play Oregon. And if Utah can navigate those 2 games, then let's compare them to Alabama, assuming Alabama beats Auburn.
Yeah, I watched Utah over the weekend. I'll tell you what, I haven't seen them all year, but they got a pretty good little team.
I mean, they were up against Arizona, though, which is not a particularly good team. But I'm open-minded. Listen, if Alabama gets in, fine. If they don't, and by the way, if Georgia beats LSU, Alabama's not getting in anyway. We'll take a break. More to come. 855-242-7285. We are back with more of your phone calls. Guys, what about it?
I mean, he's on a list with Peyton Manning now, right? An impressive list with Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong there.
Peyton Manning, and Tyler Bray on that list, and Jarrett.
I mean, we're talking when Garantano had the sort of the helmet incident with Pruitt and the missed play call and the call on the audible at the line and whatnot. There were people who thought Garantano might never play for Tennessee again. Instead, he's turning around and completely rallied. Pretty awesome story if you think about it. One of the underrated stories of the season.
Yeah, and I think he said he's going to come back next year, or he hinted. Didn't say. He hinted that he might come back next year. And, I mean, Paul, I know we've kind of beaten this horse a lot, but it's just you can't get over what Tennessee and Jeremy Pruitt have been able to do over the last 5-6 weeks here.
Some will argue that they really haven't beaten a good team during this stretch, but to me that's not the point. The point is they were in a disastrous situation, and Tennessee is now beating teams it has been losing to in recent years.
Yeah, that could continue again next week, right? Against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, it will continue.
Yeah,
I'd pick them as a strong
can't
favorite.
build this much goodwill with their fan base and then lose to Vanderbilt. It just.
Well, I thought Missouri was really the key game. That was a team that has owned them lately, and they went to Columbia and beat a team that many of us thought would enter November undefeated, and instead Missouri has just been one of the biggest disappointments of the year.
Right, and they have all the buzz now in the East, right? Like going in to the end of this year and into next year, when people are talking about SEC in the offseason, it's going to be Georgia, Florida, Tennessee instead of Georgia, Florida, Missouri now. So
right, Tennessee's going to finish 3rd in the SEC East, and after the first 2 weeks to see where they can finish there.
If you're sitting out there in Columbia, Missouri, and you were feeling great about Barry Odom in August, how are you feeling right now?
Do you think the NCAA bowl ban or anything had overhanging?
No.
Because I think everybody thought that was going to get decided by the end of September.
I don't think it had one thing to do with it. To me, it gave them some cause, but since they never had a determination, I don't know how you could possibly say that had did that cost them the Wyoming game?
No.
Oh, you know what it was? It was they couldn't score touchdowns for a long time.
You know what it is?
Problem.
Kelly Bryant's just not that good.
Yeah.
I mean, nice kid, but has not played that well. Blake Topmeyer is our guest from Knoxville, and Blake covers the Volunteers from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Blake, who would have thought that somebody would even be able to raise the question about Jeremy Pruitt getting consideration for Coach of the Year back in early September? Thanks for being a part of the program. And what is going on in Knoxville?
Yeah, it's been a remarkable turnaround, Paul. And to your point, beyond Ed Ogeron, I mean, Pruitt probably would be the conversation. And the conversation really doesn't need to go past Ogeron at this point. But if you did dip down into a second tier, I think Pruitt probably would be in it. I mean, it's kind of remarkable, the fact that they started 0-2, the inexplicable loss to Georgia State. They blow it against BYU, and I think a lot of people, probably myself included, frankly, had them left for dead after that 1-4 start, and then they've turned it around with better quarterback play, and the defense has really got going in this 4-game winning streak.
Now critics will say, Blake, you've heard it, you live there, that okay, look at the collection of schools that Tennessee has beaten, and to me that's fine, but you're still beating SEC opponents. And these are not great teams, but what else can you do?
Yeah, and I think really it's more noteworthy this year that they've beaten the teams that they need to beat to kind of move up the pecking order in the SEC East as compared to last year. They had those wins over top 25 opponents, Auburn and Kentucky. And, those really kind of stood out as highlights of the season. But then they lost to South Carolina. They lost to Missouri. They lost to Vanderbilt. I think it's better for Tennessee, rather than have, a couple of those top 25 victories, to beat all the teams in the SEC East that you're trying to pass to at least, get yourself into the top tier to where, they're still not in the conversation with Georgia and Florida. Frankly, they're probably still quite a ways off from that. But they're now establishing themselves as the top of that next pack, whereas coming into this season, they'd been the bottom of that other pack for the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and by the way, to your very point, you think anyone in Columbia, South Carolina remembers beating Georgia right now?
Yeah, I mean, probably not. No, I mean, you make a good point. Those top 25 wins are great, but I think by and large, you'd rather have a bulk of wins against teams that you think you should beat rather than just that one shining moment.
So let's talk about what it means. First of all, with a win against Vanderbilt, which I'm going to go ahead and bake into the conversation, do I read correctly Tennessee is headed for a New Year's Day bowl?
Well, it's kind of all across the board. I mean, to me, the most likely destinations would be the Gator Bowl, which I believe is actually January 2nd.
Well,
or
close.
Yes, or the Liberty. I mean, the Liberty Bowl desperately wants them. That's the bowl that I think wants Tennessee the most. Of course, it's not just the Liberty Bowl's decision. I mean, the individual teams get a say in that. The SEC ultimately makes the assignment, and so I mean, I think there's a few different places they could go. I think one of the projections on ESPN actually has them going to the Outback Bowl. That feels a little bit high for me. I still feel like Auburn seems like a good bet for the Outback Bowl, but they could go in a lot of directions. For me, I think the Gator Bowl and the Liberty Bowl, though, are probably the two most likely destinations.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with Tennessee geography, Memphis is the host of the Liberty Bowl. It is in the same state of Tennessee, even though having grown up in Memphis and attended the University of Tennessee, you would never know it based on the distance.
Well, and Memphis has become really important recruiting territory for Jeremy Pruitt. He's got 3 commitments in this class from the city of Memphis. He's had a couple signees the past couple years from Memphis, and so I guess that would be one good thing for Tennessee, spending a week in Memphis for the Liberty Bowl. And I think how long the Liberty Bowl has wanted Tennessee. It's been since 1986 since they've been able to get the Vols there, and they've made no bones about it. Like, Tennessee is their 1A, and it's a giant gap between their 1B choice. If it was up to them, they'd be in Memphis, but the Vols are going to have something to say about it,
What
too.
type of opponent would you get in that game?
Liberty Bowl would be against the Big 12. I think you'd be looking at someone like an Iowa State.
Okay.
I believe it's the 4th selection from the Big 12. So, someone that's probably pretty comparable, on par with Tennessee, probably like a 7-win team, I think, is what you'd get in the Liberty Bowl. And I think that's about what you'd get, 7 or 8 win team, probably from the Big 10 in the Gator Bowl if that's the direction Tennessee were to go.
How is this translating, Blake, to recruiting, which is just around the corner?
It's been pretty quiet for Tennessee here throughout the fall on the recruiting trail. They haven't lost a lot of guys, and that was noteworthy given the start, but it hasn't really gone wild here in recent weeks either. They had one big day, it was probably about a month ago, where they got 3 linebackers all from the same high school in Memphis in a span of like 2 hours. But beyond that, it's been pretty quiet in recruiting. This is a class that's probably going to finish in the top 20. I think it's going to be a good, not great class. And one of the keys is hanging on to Harrison Bailey, the 4-star quarterback commitment. He's been committed for a year now. That still feels pretty solid. And then I think they need to add another wide receiver. They got a couple wide receiver commitments, but, with all the wide receivers they're going to be losing this year, notably Juwan Jennings and Marquez Callaway, they need to kind of stock up in that area.
Blake, what's the deal with Garantano? I mean, every time I turn into Tennessee, I see him coming and going.
He's like the perfect protagonist for this Tennessee season because, it's just been a wacky season, and then he's had a wild story within the season. The way he started this year, we didn't see coming because this was a guy that truly performed pretty well throughout spring practice, performed well throughout fall camp. And I know it's different between practice and games, but this was a guy that had a year and a half of starting experience. So it's not like he wasn't used to playing in games before. It's just, I think he really struggled early on. I felt like he was swimming in Jim Chaney's offense. I think there was the belief, myself included, coming into the season that Jim Chaney was going to be really good for Garantano. And I think ultimately he probably still is. But the fact is, at the beginning of the season, Garantano was working with his 4th offensive coordinator in as many seasons, and you just felt like he was swimming in that offense. And then I think he made some bad decisions. His confidence probably got shaken a little bit. And I thought we'd pretty well seen the last of him. When he fumbled on that quarterback sneak against Alabama, I really felt like the coaching staff had lost all faith in him, all trust in him at that point. Certainly the fan base was up in arms with Garantano at that point over that fumbled quarterback sneak. And I thought that was pretty much going to be it for the Garantano era. Now, they needed him, and so he played by necessity a couple weeks after that because his freshman replacement, Brian Maurer, had some injury concerns. And Garantano, to his credit, performed pretty well in relief. And so then there was like this narrative that maybe he's just better off the bench, which never really made sense because he'd started so many games in his career and he'd had some good games last year as a starter. I really think what it was is they simplified the offense a little bit for him. And then in the other direction, I think he just got a better understanding of what Jim Chaney wanted out of him and the expectations. Early in the season, I think he was improvising a little too much in terms of changing Chaney's play calls and maybe just had a little bit too much freedom and not sure what to do with it. Now I think he's got a much better handle on it. He's confident, and the team has bought back in him, too. I think this team is fully behind him. I do think maybe he lost the team for a while, but, with a veteran guy and the way he's playing, you can win it back pretty quickly, and I think he has.
Blake Guttmeyer joining us from Knoxville on the resurgent Tennessee Vols. Yes, you heard that correctly. Blake, come back soon. Thank you very, very much.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Paul.
You got it. We'll take a short break. We are back with more guests and more of your phone calls.
We're proud to be playing this game at Kroger Field here this weekend and trying to keep this cup here with us. So big game this week. We're excited about the opportunity. Very proud of the way our team played this past week. And, rivalry week is here and need to continue that and play a very good game here this week. Coach Satterfield and their staff has done a remarkable job this year. This team's playing hard. They're playing good. So we have to be ready for a big game. He's one of those guys. There's no question. Each year, last year he had surgeries and had to take care of his body in the offseason. It took him a long time to get healthy. This year, as the year goes on, same thing. He has some ups and some downs and gives it everything he's got. And I'm really proud of Cash and what he's done and overcoming some adversity and things that maybe not everybody knows about. And, each individual is different and goes through some ups and downs and has a lot of, trials and tribulations and things going on in their personal life, in their own life, and in their families that are just very hard. But the young man gives us everything he's got all the time. We love him. He's a great teammate, and he's ready to go. He'll be back out there ready to go this week. So proud of him and the things he's had to overcome.
Mark, I looked this morning in the National Weather Service says there's a 70% chance of rain.
Wow.
Do you guys just expect it to rain now?
It's just, it's been strange. We've won each game, I think, haven't we?
2-1.
2-1. Georgia, that's right. Yep. It is what it is, so I think everybody knows we're going to throw the ball 50 times. So that may hurt a little bit.
We appreciate your clarification of the Florida State situation the other night. Personally, I would think your phone would be ringing off the hook. Have you talked to any other programs?
No, I don't want to get into any specifics about anything like that, and I don't want to open up, speculation and things for the future. I just don't think it's appropriate. I was pretty clear on, I'm really intent on being here and building this program, and we have unfinished business, and I'm excited about the future. So that was pretty clear.
Yeah, I know you don't pay attention to social media, but at least this week the fan base does want you to stay here. So.
Well, that's it. I appreciate that. Thank you. Keep me updated.
This is the Paul Finebaum Show, presented by Regions Bank.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to Ray in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hello, Ray.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I just had just a couple of brief comments. I'm a Tennessee fan, and I heard a lot of what was said earlier from the gentleman from Knoxville. What do you think about the future of the program? Do you think that they finally got the right staff in place?
Well, listen, my gut answer would be yes. I still think the offense has been inconsistent this year, but it takes a while. And I think Blake made a good point when you talk about all the different people and coaches that Garantano has worked with. But I wouldn't switch too much up right now. I'd try to get some continuity and especially start building some recruiting bases, because I think that's the key to Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. Another point I wanted to make, you don't hear a lot about basketball, it doesn't seem like on this show, but my gosh, Tennessee under Barnes, the recruits he's got coming in 2020, it's unbelievable. They're the fourth-ranked class in the nation right now. I don't think they've ever had anything going on like they have now with recruiting there.
Well, certainly not in a generation or two, I would agree. Listen, I love the college basketball and happen to be a big fan of Rick Barnes, and we had him on our show not long ago. But we are about to turn and change seasons, so I think we'll make up for that. Thank you. Coach is up next in Morristown. Hello, Coach.
Hey, Paul. How are you feeling?
I'm doing a lot better. Thank you. I appreciate you asking.
Well, I know that I know what you have, and that cough lasts forever, Paul. I hate to tell you.
Well,
it's just hard to make it go away, but. Yeah, let me reiterate what Ray said about Rick Barnes. When I got to visit the show a few weeks ago when you were in Knoxville and got to see Rick again and talk to him, he was really excited about the future and the recruits coming in, and seemed to, losing the two that he lost in Grant and Admiral. That was a tough two to replace, but he seemed excited, and obviously rightfully so.
Well, he should be.
Playing well.
Listen, he's building off of the best year Tennessee's had in, I don't know, about 40 years or so. And
since Ernie and Bernie, probably.
So those are two about as good a 5-star recruits as you'll ever get, and he hasn't slowed up, and that's the key. He's one of the most unique coaches I've ever met.
Yes, and he's had to make a lot of changes the way he's done it, and he's done it well. But, hey, the reason I called, too, is I did hear your comments about that you said about Rod Mullins last week, and your apology, too. And, it just made me think, we're always going to have comments or you just said what everyone thinks. And it's always going to be that way until they do one thing, and that's make it transparent. Why do you think they just won't make it transparent and tell us what they're saying in those meetings? I just don't understand that.
Well, I mean, I'll try to answer for them, even though it makes me sick to do that. I think they just feel like there's some protection by being on that committee, that you don't have to be accountable. And I think in today's social media world, maybe I understand one element. Listen, Coach, someone like me is in the public domain, and things are going to be said about me on a minute-to-minute basis. I think some of these people would not be used to that, and I think that's the main rationale. And everyone is different. I
agree.
I sit here some days and I read what is said about me, and I'm to the point now where I'm so desensitized that all I can do is laugh.
Well,
I mean, and by the way, one more thing. It's not so much when somebody I've never met or never heard of disparages me, but when people that are in the same industry lazily just take shots without ever attempting to find out the truth, I do take note of those and go, what has happened to our industry? Why is there so much follow the leader in social media? Does it make someone feel better to say the same thing that 1,000 other people have already said?
Doesn't make them right. I just feel like they're recusing themselves when they speak about or have discussions about their team, and then re-enter the room after the discussion. Come on, man.
Well, let me say this about Rob Mullins, and I don't know, you probably did hear me, that I did have a chance to have a long conversation with him Friday, and I will say I understand why so many people respect him and believe that he is honorable and is capable of that. My criticism of him was never personal. I know it sounded that way, and I know what came out. It was never intended to be personal. It just I just didn't like the system. But I've said all I can say about it. It's not germane any longer because Oregon lost, and they're not a factor.
Paul, just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Let's continue with more calls. Ty is up next in Alabama. Hello, Ty.
Hey, Finebaum. I called in to ask you about Alabama's chances buying that Oregon loss Saturday.
I think they're pretty good. I mean, we're all factoring in a win at Auburn. I think with a win at Auburn, they have done all the. I mean, they have a loss against the #1 team in the country. How many of the other schools would be able to go through that schedule and not have a loss to LSU? To me, that's what nobody wants to factor in. All the national media honks who want to talk about their schedule. Look at Clemson's schedule. Look at Utah's schedule. They have a loss to Southern Cal. I'll take losing to LSU over Southern Cal, and the difference is that they don't have a conference championship game. Well, they lost to the best team in the country right now.